Newark International Airport buzzed with its usual chaos, but for Malik Carter, a freshly appointed Black director of operations at Transcontinental Airlines, the world seemed to narrow to a single point: the gate for his flight to Chicago. He was late, sure, but the flight was still there, with passengers still boarding. Malik had just finished a meeting with the board that had gone longer than expected, and now, with his next big task ahead, overseeing the opening of a major new operation in Chicago, he couldn't afford to miss this last flight of the night. He had sprinted through the terminal, expertly navigating through the throngs of passengers rushing to their gates. But when he finally reached gate B14, his heart sank. The door was already closed, and standing in front of it was Rachel Turner, the gate supervisor, arms crossed in front of her chest, a smug look on her face that immediately set off alarms in Malik's mind. "Sorry, Mr. Carter," Rachel said with a tone that suggested a level of satisfaction, as if she'd just completed a mission. "Our policy is clear. The doors close 15 minutes before departure. No exceptions." Malik glanced at his watch. 14 minutes before the flight was scheduled to leave. His heart raced as he processed the situation. "My clock says it's 14 minutes before departure," he replied, trying to keep his frustration in check. "I'm asking for a minute or two." Rachel didn't budge. She tapped her wrist, where a sleek, expensive watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "My clock says it's 15 minutes. The count's already been processed, and the doors closed." Behind them, the airport continued its rhythmic pulse. Passengers filed past, some running toward their gates, others heading in the opposite direction to baggage claim. The distant hum of luggage carts echoed through the cavernous space. But in the immediate vicinity, the world had narrowed to a simple confrontation: Malik's fate in the hands of Rachel Turner. Malik took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He had spent years working his way up through the airline industry, overcoming the racial bias and systemic barriers that so often got in his way. He had learned how to handle difficult situations with poise, how to navigate corporate culture with grace. But this was different. This wasn't just an inconvenience. This was yet another example of how the system, deeply entrenched in favoritism and bias, operated against him. "Look," Malik said, keeping his voice calm and steady, "I understand the need for policies, but this meeting ran late. I have an important event in Chicago tomorrow morning, and this is the last flight of the night. If I miss it, I'll miss the opening. You don't want that on your hands?" Rachel's eyes flickered with something. Was it doubt? A brief moment of hesitation? Then it was gone, replaced by a cold, professional mask. "You should have planned better," she said. "The next flight to Chicago is at 6:15 a.m. You can rebook at customer service." Malik's stomach tightened. He had dealt with men like Rachel before, gatekeepers who believed their role was to enforce rules with no understanding of the bigger picture. The lack of empathy, the stubbornness, the quick dismissal of any reasonable explanation. He had learned to expect it, but it didn't make it any easier. "Is there anyone else I can speak to?" Malik asked, keeping his tone even, but the effort it took to remain professional weighed heavily on him. "I'm the gate supervisor," Rachel replied sharply, her eyes narrowing. "There's no one else. The decision stands." Malik nodded slowly, memorizing her name badge. The impassive set of her shoulders would be something he'd think back to later. He didn't need to say anything more. He didn't need to reveal who he was, at least not yet. But he knew that when Monday morning came, he would be stepping into the role of Director of Operations for Transcontinental Airlines, and Rachel Turner would be one of the first issues he'd address. "Thank you for your time, Marnam," Malik said, his voice calm despite the simmering frustration that threatened to boil over. He turned away and pulled out his phone, calling his assistant, Vanessa, to arrange alternative transportation to Chicago. "Vanessa," Malik said as soon as she answered, "I've been denied boarding on the last flight to Chicago. Rachel Turner, she's the one who wouldn't let me on. I need another way to get to Chicago tonight." "Ugh, I knew it," Vanessa replied, the exasperation clear in her voice. "I've heard complaints about her before, but this? Classic. Let me check options, Malik. I'm not worried about the flight, but she has no idea who I am. Come Monday when I walk through that door as the new Director of Operations, things are going to change," Malik said with quiet confidence. Vanessa's voice softened. "Want me to book the company jet?" Malik thought for a moment before shaking his head, even though she couldn't see him. "Number booked me on the 6:15 commercial flight tomorrow? I've got work to do tonight. I'll review the personnel files for Terminal B, especially Rachel Turner's. It's time we take a deeper look." While Malik reviewed his notes in the lounge, a familiar name appeared on his phone: Elena Rodriguez, the head of security at Transcontinental Airlines. She'd been a trusted colleague for years, and Malik knew she was one of the few people at the airline who understood the challenges of racial bias that often went unchecked. Elena had always been vocal about the disparities in the way people of color were treated at Newark International. Her reputation for fairness and keen judgment had earned her respect, but also made her a target among the old guard. Elena wasted no time with pleasantries. "Malik, I just reviewed the footage from this morning's incident. It's bad," she said, her voice clipped with controlled anger. "A passenger reported a stolen laptop, and the staff falsely accused Mosai, one of our cleaning crew, of taking it. I need you to see this." Malik straightened, his attention peaked. "What happened?" he asked, his mind already shifting gears. "Play it again," Elena ordered as the young technician beside her complied, rewinding the security footage. The video showed a middle-aged white man placing his laptop in the seat pocket before leaving to use the restroom. When he returned, the laptop was gone, but the only person who had been in the row was Mosai, a black woman who had worked for the airline's cleaning contractor for nearly a decade without incident. Elena's eyes narrowed as she watched the footage. The technician, Kevin, spoke up hesitantly. "The passenger's pretty adamant he knows it was her. He's convinced." Elena's tone was cold as she replied, "Let's keep watching." The video continued, showing the passenger returning to his seat and pulling the laptop from the overhead bin. He had clearly forgotten that detail when he initially accused Osai. The false accusation had escalated quickly. The passenger had demanded the cleaning staff member be detained, and the airline security had started questioning Osai in front of other passengers. "Send this to HR and legal," Elena said firmly. "I want a formal apology issued to Mosai, and I want this documented. This passenger made a false accusation and will flag his profile in the system. I want to know if he's filed any previous complaints against staff." Kevin nodded, relieved to have Elena's support. That poor woman was in tears in the break room. The passenger was shouting, calling for her to be deported. Malik's blood boiled as Elena relayed the details. He knew all too well the unfair targeting of black employees in public spaces. As the only black male director in the entire company, he had become all too familiar with the way racial bias seeped into everyday interactions, both in the workplace and with customers. But seeing it play out so blatantly made it personal. "I'll speak with her personally," Elena continued, her voice softening slightly as she collected the files. "And I'll also have Kevin review the security protocols. This should never have happened in front of other passengers." Malik ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting as he thought about how frequently these incidents went unreported. In fact, many of his colleagues would have written off this case, swept it under the rug, and moved on. But Elena's commitment to fairness wasn't just a job, it was personal. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. He glanced at the screen and saw her text. "Rachel Turner blocked you, but she led a late family board just after. Guess who else is on the no-fly list now?" Malik sighed. "It's happening again," he muttered, more to himself than to Elena. He knew that Rachel's discriminatory actions weren't just a single incident. They were part of a systemic issue that had plagued the airline for years. "I have a plan," Malik said to Elena, suddenly alert. "We can't keep letting these things slide. It's time we expose what's really happening here. I'm going to take this to the top." Elena looked at him, a spark of understanding in her eyes. She knew exactly what he was about to do, and she was fully behind him. "What's your move?" she asked. "I'm meeting with the board on Monday," Malik said, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "I'll bring all of this. The gate policies, the discriminatory practices, the culture of bias that's embedded in every corner of the airport. I want to see action, not just words." Elena gave a nod of approval. "I've already started gathering data on boarding denials and passenger complaints. It's illuminating, Malik, but you'll need to push for transparency. Push hard. These people have been in charge for too long." Malik smiled, though there was no warmth in it. That's exactly what I'm planning to do. I'll be gathering the right people to make this happen. Rachel Turner, Thomas Reynolds, and the rest of the old guard, they won't know what hit them. As the conversation ended and Alina went to speak with MOSI, Malik's mind raced with ideas. He needed a strategy. He needed allies within the company who understood the problems, who were ready to stand up for change. But most of all, he needed the courage to challenge the powerful people who had long protected a system of racial discrimination. As Malik walked out of the lounge and headed toward his hotel, the weight of the upcoming battle loomed large. But something had shifted inside him. The fight wasn't just about policies or procedures. It was about justice, fairness, and the integrity of the entire organization. He had always been an advocate for his people, and now in this new role, he had the power to change things. Monday morning was coming fast, and Malik was ready to face whatever resistance lay ahead. The boardroom at Transcontinental Airlines was quieter than usual when Malik Carter entered. It wasn't the typical chatter of strategy or progress. This meeting had a different weight to it. He could feel the resistance in the air. The men and women who'd spent years building a system of bias were not going to let it go easily. Malik had known that going in. He took his seat at the head of the table, flanked by Carmen Washington, the general counsel, and two senior members of the board. The others, James Parker, Thomas Reynolds, and a handful of other senior executives, had all been part of the problem. Parker's people had entrenched themselves across every department, creating a network of loyalty that Malik was about to shatter. "I'm here to talk about the future of Transcontinental Airlines," Malik began, his voice steady, though his mind was racing with the enormity of what was at stake. And that future can't include the kind of discrimination that's been allowed to fester in our operations for years. The room went silent. Some faces stiffened, others shifted uncomfortably. Malik didn't flinch. He'd come prepared. "I've reviewed the data over the last 24 hours, Malik continued, clicking through the files Alina had helped gather. Black passengers, particularly men and women of color, have been denied boarding at a higher rate than their white counterparts. Even when arriving at the gate on time, they are systematically treated as though they don't belong. That stops now." Carmen Washington was the first to speak. "Malik, I understand the concern, but you know as well as I do that the system here is entrenched. Parker's people are everywhere. Rachel Turner, Thomas Reynolds, they've been part of this operation for years. They're not just going to walk away from their power." Malik held her gaze. "They'll have to. We're not just talking about changing policies. We're talking about changing a culture that's been here for decades. If they refuse to change, I'll expose them. It's time we stop pretending these issues don't exist." One of the other board members, David Lieberman, frowned. "You're asking us to overhaul everything, Malik. People like Parker have built this operation. Their experience is what's kept us competitive." Malik's voice was firm. "Their experience has also allowed a toxic culture to thrive. These aren't just minor incidents we can brush aside. We've systematically ignored racism, and now it's showing up in the data. We need an audit of all gate management procedures and a full investigation into scheduling practices. If we want to be a leader in the industry, we need to lead on this too." There was a brief silence, and then Carmen spoke up again. "You're prepared for the fallout, Malik. Parker won't just roll over, and Reynolds has his own network. This could turn into a war." Malik nodded. "I've already spoken to Alina. She's gathering reports on discriminatory incidents, and we're going to make them public. We can't let these people continue to poison the well. If it means losing their loyalty, so be it." Carmen didn't seem convinced, but she nodded slowly. "It's a bold plan, and you're right about one thing. The status quo has to change. I'll support you in this, but you have to be ready. It's not going to be easy." Malik's eyes locked with hers. "I'm ready." As the meeting wound down, Malik felt a growing sense of resolve. The resistance would be fierce, but the truth was on his side. Transcontinental Airlines had to evolve. If Parker, Reynolds, and their allies refused to see it, they would be left behind. He stood up, his mind already working through the next steps. "Let's make this happen. Transcontinental will be known for its excellence in every area: customer service, safety, and, most importantly, fairness. We're not just about flying planes, we're about lifting people up, and that starts now." The board members exchanged glances, and Malik could tell that, for the first time, the wheels of change were in motion. It wasn't going to be easy, but with the right allies, the fight for justice had already begun. By the time Malik Carter walked into the conference room for his first official meeting as Director of Operations, the air was thick with anticipation. The employees had been buzzing with news of his arrival, but Malik knew the real challenge wasn't just about making changes. It was about surviving the pushback from the entrenched leadership that had controlled the company for so long. He had already begun putting his plan into action. Elena Rodriguez, head of security, had been instrumental in gathering data on discriminatory boarding practices, including the racial disparities in how passengers were treated. Malik's first priority was to confront those responsible. This was the moment of reckoning. The room went silent when he entered. Sitting at the long table were several of the department heads, including Rachel Turner, the very gate supervisor who had denied Malik boarding the previous Friday. Her smug smile from that day had not gone unnoticed, and Malik was determined to set the tone for the future. "Good morning," Malik began, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable edge. "I've had the chance to review the data we've gathered, and I'm here to discuss the systemic issues that have been allowed to persist in our operations." Rachel Turner shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she didn't speak. Malik continued, his eyes briefly scanning the room before landing back on her. "It's come to my attention that Black passengers, particularly men and women of color, have been denied boarding at a significantly higher rate than their white counterparts. I want to know how this happened." Rachel opened her mouth to speak, but Malik raised his hand, signaling for her to wait. "We've already reviewed the data. I don't need an excuse. I need an explanation." Rachel's face reddened. She had been part of the problem for far too long, but Malik wasn't about to let her or anyone else in the room escape responsibility for the culture that had allowed discrimination to flourish. "I understand that you have a policy about closing the gate 15 minutes before departure," Malik said, keeping his voice steady. "But when that policy is applied inconsistently, when Black passengers are disproportionately impacted, you need to ask yourself, is the policy the problem, or is it the people enforcing it?" There was a noticeable shift in the room. Malik could see some of the other department heads glancing at each other nervously. Thomas Reynolds, head of scheduling, shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with where this conversation was headed. "You've been here for years, Rachel," Malik said, turning his attention back to her. "And this wasn't just an isolated incident. I've been made aware of a pattern of discriminatory treatment, and I won't tolerate it any longer. Starting today, I'm implementing new procedures." Malik slid a folder across the table. Inside was a detailed performance improvement plan for Rachel Turner. The plan outlined new responsibilities for her, ones that she had never been held accountable for before. She would no longer be just a gate supervisor. Instead, Rachel would oversee the implementation of a new, fairer boarding protocol. She would be directly responsible for ensuring that the airline's new policies on racial equity were upheld. Her compensation would be tied directly to the improvement of these metrics, and failure to meet these standards would result in disciplinary action. Rachel glanced at the folder, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You want me to be the face of this change?" Malik leaned forward, his tone unflinching. "I do. If you want to keep your job, this is the role you'll take. You will oversee weekly audits of boarding practices, and you will report directly to me. If you can't embrace this, then I'm afraid your time here is over." The room was quiet for a moment. Rachel didn't respond immediately, but Malik could see the wheels turning in her mind. She had always believed she was untouchable, that her position within the system would protect her from the consequences of her actions. But now the rules had changed. Finally, Rachel spoke, her voice low and controlled. "You can't just change everything overnight. People like Thomas Reynolds and James Parker won't accept this. They've been running this place for too long." Malik stood up, his voice firm. "They don't run this place anymore. I do. And if anyone else thinks they can challenge me on this, I'll make sure they know exactly what happens when you try to stop progress." He turned to Thomas Reynolds, who had been unusually silent throughout the meeting. "Thomas, I've reviewed your scheduling practices, and I'm not happy with what I've seen. I've heard complaints from staff about how you've treated women and minorities in scheduling. Your department will undergo an immediate review, and you will be held accountable. The tension in the room was palpable. Malik could see the discomfort on the faces of the other department heads. They had been shielded for too long, but Malik had come to do more than just manage operations. He had come to hold them all accountable. "I'm not here to make friends," Malik continued, his voice cold and clear. "I'm here to make Transcontinental Airlines a company that values every passenger, regardless of their race, gender, or background. This change isn't optional. It's happening whether you like it or not." As Malik concluded the meeting and watched the department heads file out of the room, he felt a surge of determination. The fight had just begun. There would be resistance, but Malik knew one thing. The wheels of change were in motion, and no one, no matter how powerful, was going to stop them. 8 weeks had passed since Malik Carter had stepped into the role of Director of Operations at Transcontinental Airlines. The early days of tension and resistance had given way to a more dynamic and evolving workplace. The fight was far from over, but progress was undeniable. The new policies he'd put in place were beginning to show tangible results. Inside the airport's operations office, Malik sat reviewing the latest metrics. Boarding practices had become significantly more equitable, with racial disparities all but erased. Passengers of color were no longer disproportionately denied boarding. The complaints had dropped, and customer satisfaction scores had reached new highs. As he leaned back in his chair, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a message from Alina Rodriguez, the head of security who had become one of his most trusted allies. Rachel Turner just reported that the latest weekly audit shows a 30% improvement in boarding consistency across the board. "It's working." Malik smiled. Rachel Turner, once the face of discrimination, had embraced her new role as the leader of Transcontinental's Fairness Initiative. It hadn't been an easy transition for her, but she had adapted, and so had the rest of the team. The results were speaking for themselves. There were still moments when old habits crept in, when subtle biases emerged, but the difference now was the accountability Malik had instilled. Discrimination wasn't allowed to slip through the cracks anymore. Everyone was aware that they were being watched, not just by Malik, but by the entire leadership team, which was growing more diverse and attuned to the needs of the workforce. Malik stood up and walked over to the large window that overlooked the bustling airport. A familiar sense of calm washed over him as he observed the planes lifting into the sky. Transcontinental Airlines was changing, and he was leading it through one of its most critical transformations. His thoughts were interrupted when Carmen Washington, the general counsel, entered the room. "Malik," she said, her voice carrying a note of approval, "I think we've done something significant here. The media is starting to take notice of the changes you've implemented." Malik raised an eyebrow. "And what's the coverage like?" "Positive," Carmen replied. "There's buzz in the industry about our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Customers are taking notice too. I just spoke with the PR team. They want to schedule a press conference to highlight the transformation." Malik chuckled softly. "Well, I never did this for the headlines, but I'm glad to see the results getting attention." Carmen nodded. "Sometimes the change needs to be visible to the outside world to truly make an impact internally. People will start to see Transcontinental as a leader, not just in flying planes, but in creating an inclusive, fair environment." Malik turned back to the window, his thoughts drifting to the path ahead. There were still challenges. Resistance would always exist, no matter how much progress was made. The lawsuit from Thomas Reynolds claiming wrongful termination was still unresolved, and anonymous complaints about reverse discrimination continued to circulate. But Malik knew that these were small battles compared to the war he had won. "Have you heard from Rachel?" Malik asked, his eyes focused on the runway. "How's she handling the new role?" "She's committed," Carmen said with a smile. "She's becoming a true advocate for change. In fact, I think she started mentoring some of the younger staff members on how to enforce the new protocols. She's even earned a lot of respect from the people who were initially skeptical of her." Malik nodded thoughtfully. "That's good to hear. I was hard on her, but I think she's starting to see that real leadership comes with responsibility. It's not just about enforcing rules. It's about creating a space where everyone can thrive." Just then, Alina Rodriguez entered the room. "Malik, I just came from Gate B14. There's a new energy in the team. The staff is more engaged than ever. And you won't believe this. David Lieberman from Customer Analytics came to me with an idea for a mentorship program for women and minorities in leadership positions. It's starting to feel like we've really made a dent. Malik's eyes lit up. David Lieberman, once a quiet observer in the back of the room, was now speaking up. His proposal for mentorship was a sign that the cultural shift wasn't just superficial, it was deep-rooted. "This is exactly what I wanted," Malik said, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "I wanted everyone to see that change isn't something you impose from the top down. It's something that grows from within the organization. People are starting to take ownership of the transformation. That's when you know the culture is shifting for real." Alina smiled. "It's working. People who've been silent for so long are now speaking up, and they're ready to help lead this company into the future." Malik nodded, his thoughts turning to the work ahead. The struggle was far from over. There were still pockets of resistance, old systems to dismantle, and some employees who remained unconvinced. But Malik had made it clear: fairness, transparency, and accountability were no longer optional. They were the foundation of the airline's operations. Later that evening, as Malik prepared to board a flight back to Chicago, he received an email that made him pause. It was from Rachel Turner, a simple note, but one that carried the weight of months of transformation. "Thank you for believing in me. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Malik closed the laptop and stood up, looking out at the horizon. The winds of change were blowing strong. Transcontinental Airlines was no longer a company of yesterday. It was evolving, rising to meet the challenges of tomorrow.